Okay, we are live. Sergeants, will you begin your recordings?
PC recording is up.
Cloud recording is rolling. Thank you. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos for verification purposes. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the New York City Council preliminary budget hearing on the Committee on Economic Development for the fiscal year 2023. In order to minimize disruption of this hearing, please place all electronic devices to silent or vibrate mode. Thank you. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so via email to testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your kind cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Now that I've broken my phone by gaveling us in. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, 1 second. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's budget hearing. My name is Amanda Farias, and I am the chair of the Council's Committee on Economic Development. We're also joined today by Councilmember Kevin Riley. The COVID-19 pandemic ravaged our economy. New York City Economic Development Corporation has been supporting the citywide response to COVID-19 in numerous ways, including most recently distributing vaccine incentives for boosters and first doses. The continuation of this critical work is now an integral part of the NYEDC's framework and overall mission. Today, in particular, we want to review NYEDC's budget and spending breakdown of the COVID-19 related procurement contracts and how that budget will be adjusted in the coming years. I want to know what alterations the agency has made to the strategy incorporating the lessons learned from the pandemic and its impact on capital spending. Today, we'll be hearing from NYCEDC on their fiscal 2023 preliminary commitment plan, capital budget, and the fiscal 2021 investment projects report. Each one of these programs should support and be well integrated with one another to properly execute the city's capital projects, as well as meet its infrastructure goals. We will examine to what extent this is occurring, where improvements need to be made, and the overall feasibility of NYCEDC's capital program. During the pandemic, there was a halt on capital projects which impacted the year's commitment rate. Does NYCEDC have any stated plans on how they're going to address last year's ongoing projects and balance them with this year's projects? What indicators does NYCEDC use internally to measure its impact on the city's broader economy? How might that look different in periods of strong versus weak growth? Additionally, we will look into the assistance NYCEDC provides to projects throughout the city on a discretionary basis to support economic growth and private investment. Projects may be firms or nonprofits, and it may take advisory, financial, and other forms. Most NYCEDC financial aid is administered by the NYC Industrial Development Agency, or BUILD NYC, with energy assistance co-administered by NYCEDC and Con Edison. NYCEDC is the city's primary agent for economic development, and their principal mandate is to encourage investment and to attract, retain, and create jobs in New York City. As such, this committee is interested in having a robust conversation about how NYCEDC's budget, as laid out in this preliminary plan, connects to the larger job creation and economic development strategies of the city. In this budget hearing, we will review NYCEDC's capital plan for fiscal 2022 to 2026. In addition to the 491 NYEDC projects, NYEDC is also managing 526 capital projects for other agencies. The council would like to learn more about how NYEDC decides which agencies and which projects to work on, and how capacity and communication directly impact success. NYEDC has several funds in its capital plan that total over $849 million for fiscal 2022 to 2031. These funds will be used in the future for various projects based on city priorities for neighborhood revitalization, commercial development, infrastructure upgrade, industrial development, waterfront development, and port development. As the recipients of these funds are decided later, the City Council is not always aware of all the projects when the budget is adopted. We want NYEDC to update the council on recent projects that came out of these funds and any other projects that are on the horizon. To support economic growth and private investment, NYEDC provides assistance to projects throughout the city on a discretionary basis. Direct discretionary financial assistance from NYEDC totaled $247.2 million across 456 new and ongoing investment projects. Of these 456 active projects, 15 were new in fiscal 2021. Of the 15 new projects beginning in fiscal 2021, 10 were administered by Build NYC, 2 of which were NYC IDA fresh projects, another 2 of which were industrial incentive projects, and 1 of which was an NYC IDA commercial project. The council would like to know from NYCEDC how these projects were selected and how involved the city council was in that process. I would also like to know if any of these projects have penalties or have been subject to cancellation of aid or clawbacks. Finally, I want the agency to go over both revenue contributed by New York City Economic Development Corporation to the general fund and net revenue generated post contributions to the general fund. Since fiscal 2019, net revenue has been negative for NYEDC. What is the reason for this and how does it impact the agency? It is essential that the budget we adopt this year is transparent, accountable, and reflective of the priorities and interests of the council and the people we represent. This hearing is a vital part of this process, and I expect that NYCEDC will be responsive to the questions and concerns of council members. I look forward to an active engagement with the administration over the next few months to ensure the fiscal 2023 adopted budget meets the goals the council has set out. I would like to thank Andrew Kimball for coming here today and testifying. I would like to thank NYCEDC staff who have been consistently responsive to our many requests. We would not be able to analyze the city's budget at such a detailed level without your cooperation. So thank you. I would also like to thank both my staff and the staff of the Finance and Legislative Division for their help in preparing for this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, we've been joined by Councilmember Riley and Councilmember Kagan. My name is Stephanie Ruiz, and for today, I'll be serving as the counsel to New York City's Council Committee on Economic Development. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are recognized to speak, at which time you'll be unmuted by the Zoom host. If you mute yourself after you've been unmuted, you need to be unmuted again by the host. Please be aware that there could be a delay in muting and unmuting, so please be patient. Here today to give testimony will be President and CEO of EDC, Andrew Kimball. President Kimball is joined by EDC's Chief Operating Officer, Carl Rodriguez, followed by Executive Vice President of Project Implementation, Josh Kraus, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Liz Rostek, and Executive Vice President of Initiatives, Faye Penn, who will all be available for questioning. I will call on you shortly when it is time to begin your testimony. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question of the administration or of a specific panelist, please use the Zoom raise hand function and I will call on you to speak. We'll be limiting the first round of council member questions to 3 minutes, which includes the time it takes to answer those questions. Before we begin testimony, I will administer the oath. To all members of the administration who will be offering testimony or will be available for questions, please raise your hands, right hands now. I will call on you individually for a response. Do you affirm that do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? President Kimball.
I do.
Thank you. Chief Operating Officer Rodriguez.
I do.
Thank you. Executive Vice President Kraus.
I do.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Financial Officer Verostek.
I do.
Thank you. Executive Vice President Penn.
I do.
Thank you. President Kimball, you may begin when ready.
Good morning, Chair Farias and members of the Economic Development Committee. I'm Andrew Kimball, the new President and CEO of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, the EDC. It's great to connect with all of you in this new role, and I look forward to working in partnership to grow a resilient, inclusive, and competitive economy in every corner of the city. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Joshua Kraus, our Director of Project Implementation, Carl Rodriguez, our Chief Operating Officer, Elizabeth Veristek, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer, and Faye Penn, our Executive Vice President for Initiatives. For decades, EDC has been responsible for driving economic development across all 5 boroughs. Its impact is realized through a number of pathways, including real estate management, disposition, and land use. EDC controls 64 million square feet of assets, ranging from the Brooklyn Army Terminal and Made in New York campus. In Brooklyn, we're investing $600 million to bring new garment and light manufacturing, to the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center in the Bronx, which you'll hear more about in a moment. Over the last 8 years, EDC has led hundreds of real estate transactions, as well as key land dispositions and rezonings to drive smart growth in key business districts. All of this has led to nearly 6,000 new units of housing built or planned, all affordable, 1 million square feet of new commercial space, and $7 billion in economic activity. Examples include the Inwood New York City Action Plan. We invested $200 million to create affordable housing, a new library, community space, and more. $200 million in through the downtown Far Walkway rezoning, which includes the development of affordable housing, infrastructure improvements, commercial spaces, and open spaces. The Deerfields Cure Innovation Campus is bringing new life sciences to Manhattan, while the Tech Training Center in Union Square will help launch tech startups and offer career training. Our new office anchor in East New York, which will bring new commercial office space and tenants to an underdeveloped area. In Queens, Archer Green, a new 100% affordable housing complex, just opened its doors to tenants in 387 apartments. The transformational project born out of the Jamaica Now Action Plan includes community space, commercial space, square footage, and a new supermarket. And we've reactivated the Staten Island Baseball Stadium through a new public-private partnership, which is bringing a new team and excitement to the North Shore, along with other development. And we hope you'll join us on May 3rd for the Ferry Hawks' first pitch on opening day. Sector growth. From life sciences to advanced manufacturing to green tech, EDC's mission includes diversifying the economy and the tax base while creating equitable pathways to good paying jobs. Small business and entrepreneurship. In the last 2 years through the Small Business Resource Network, we've supported 27,700 small businesses as they navigate the challenges of the pandemic. In addition, we're piloting 2 new programs for underrepresented early stage tech founders through our partnerships with New Lab and Company Ventures to give them access to government, corporate, and tech resources to help them thrive. We're also partnering with a small business services department on entrepreneurial boot camps, specifically for women over 50. Waterfront revitalization. In 2017, EDC brought to life a citywide ferry system, executing on a long-sought public transportation expansion on our waterways that has now served 22.3 million riders in its first 4 years. Other waterfront initiatives include $1.3 billion in resiliency and green infrastructure projects and the development of the country's largest offshore wind servicing port. Community infrastructure improvements. EDC is actively managing over 290 capital projects, ranging from hospitals like our newest investment, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hospital in Coney Island. This new $900 million state-of-the-art facility is expected to open this fall. And to libraries like the Charleston Library in Staten Island, which we're excited to be opening today, right now, and is the city's first net zero energy library. EDC is also helping to close the digital divide by investing $161 million to bring broadband up to 1.6 million New Yorkers, many of whom are NYCHA residents. And when the city faces a crisis, Whether it's the tragic September 11th attacks, the 2008 market collapse, Superstorm Sandy, or the global pandemic of the last 2 years, EDC steps up. At the height of the COVID-19 crisis, we pivoted our resources and collaborated with city partners and the private sector to help the city in its time of need. We partnered with more than 70 local businesses to manufacture and deliver up to 4.2 million gowns and 8.4 million face shields. We set up a local supply chain that created and delivered 1 million test kits to hospitals, clinics, and community testing sites. And we facilitated the city's $110 million vaccine incentive program. In partnership with SBS, we also dispersed $49 million in financial support to help over 1,500 small businesses and 7 safety net hospitals weather the pandemic. And now, as the city begins to recover, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine the economy of New York City. The pandemic showed us clearly the disparities caused by systemic inequities and injustices, things that have always been there. But now we have a unique opportunity on the economic development front to build a stronger, more resilient, and equitable economy. Today, EDC manages hundreds of projects and nearly $9 billion in its 10-year capital plan. For FY22, we have approximately $2.2 billion in our capital budget. Our board-approved budget for FY22 is $799 million, comprised of EDC's own funds, city capital, and expense. Last Thursday, I was excited to stand with Mayor Adams and Deputy Mayor Torres Springer at the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center to announce the Rebuild, Renew, Reinvent, a blueprint for New York City's economic recovery. This blueprint is bold, comprehensive, and 5-borough in its nature, with over 70 initiatives that aim to accelerate the return to pre-pandemic employment levels while simultaneously laying the foundation for the city's economic future. So much of this work is EDC's bread and butter, from our work increasing opportunities for MWBEs, strengthening business districts, and expanding life sciences, green economy, and other growing industries, and much more. There are 5 key pillars of the mayor's plan. 1, restart the city's economic engines and reactivate the public realm. To restart the city's economic engines and reactivate the public realm, EDC's work around quality of life in business districts across the city will continue to grow, from street-by-street cleaning and public space revitalization through Cleanup Corps, plus supporting outdoor dining through development of a kit of parts, which will both boost local manufacturing and help small restaurants implement permanent outdoor dining. 2, support small businesses, entrepreneurship, and a more equitable economy. To support small businesses, entrepreneurship, and a more equitable economy, EDC is continuing to expand the Small Business Resource Network, a public-private partnership among EDC, the Partnership Fund for New York City, and the city's Chamber of Commerce. Already, the network has supported 27,700 businesses since its launch in October 2020. EDC is supporting and expanding our initiatives focused on BIPOC and immigrant entrepreneurs, as well as MWBEs. We awarded nearly $200 million in MWBE contracts in FY21. Over 45% of the contract dollars are highest ever and well above most other agencies. And so far in FY22, we've exceeded FY21 and accomplished nearly $300 million of awards through the second quarter. And as I mentioned earlier, we're in partnership with New Lab to help underrepresented founders and funders access the resources they need to succeed in New York City's tech ecosystem. To further innovation in life sciences by BIPOC and women-led startups, we partner with Deerfield's Cure, which awards $100,000 to 5 researchers annually and gives them access to a network of other services and support. 3, drive inclusive sectoral growth and build a future-focused economy. To drive inclusive sector growth and build a future-focused economy, we look to innovation and new industry opportunities. One key example is our $1 billion 10-year commitment in life sciences. It will create over 2,000 companies and 40,000 jobs while generating $82 billion in overall economic impact. 4, connect New Yorkers to quality jobs and in-demand skills. To do this, EDC is investing in shaping the offshore wind and building efficiencies industries. We have an unprecedented opportunity to deliver on the green jobs of the future while meeting the city's ambitious carbon and energy reduction goals. The city's nearly $200 million commitment to offshore wind will generate at least 13,000 jobs and generate an expected $1.1 billion in annual economic activity. 5, plan and build our inclusive growth now and in the future. And to plan and build this inclusive growth, the mayor has initiated it with a $100 million investment in the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center in the Bronx that will save and grow 2,500 good-paying jobs and give us the opportunity to address environmental injustice suffered by this community. The EDC team was thrilled that the mayor also committed $40 million towards the Hunts Point Forward Plan development to be shared in more detail in April in partnership with the local community for open space and other public realm improvements. To implement the blueprint and drive a fair, equitable, and resoundingly successful recovery, it is going to take leadership at every level, community, government, and business coming together. EDC is committed to working with all of you and all stakeholders to do our part to make this vision a reality. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My colleagues and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, President Kimball. I will now turn over to the chair for her questions and to introduce additional council members that have joined the webinar. Chair Farias, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Andrew Kimball. I also would like to acknowledge my colleagues that have entered into the hearing, council members Salamanca, Williams, Brewer, and Aviles. So again, thank you so much for your testimony. I don't know who's throwing that first pitch, but it can't be me, so I'm happy to come and join and watch. As you mentioned, NYC EDC absolutely stepped up during the COVID-19 pandemic, so let's start with the response there. How does NYC EDC's capital and investment plan incorporate projects that strengthen the city's COVID-19 response and long-term recovery efforts?
Sure. Well, let me start with and thank you for the question, Chair Farias. I appreciate that. And once again, EDC historically has played this role, not only of driving the city's economy, but being the point really on addressing crises and economic recovery around that. And certainly we all at a personal level and at a city level have faced crisis in the last 2 years. It's been a very tough stretch. $267 million has flowed through EDC over the last 2 years to address the COVID response. Of that, let me just break it down. About $110 million went for PPE, face shields, gowns, et cetera. We quickly mobilized across our assets that we manage, manufacturers and others, to generate 4.2 million gowns that went again to community health centers, hospitals, other locations that needed them, 8.4 million face shields, 1 million test kits. We partnered with over 70 local businesses on this effort. And that about 110 million went to vaccine incentives, 95% adults with 1 dose. Nearly 1 million people have gotten the $100 incentive. And we're continuing to work with the vendor there to address the very, very small number that it didn't reach or had complaints with the process. But we're overall very proud of that program and how fast we moved on it. And critical in terms of the overall success. I think now about 77% of New Yorkers vaccinated, a real success story overall for the city. On top of that, critically important was the $49 million of small business loans and grants and hospital loan funds that we were able to facilitate working with our partners in government, particularly SBS, supporting 1,500 businesses and 7 safety net hospitals.
Thank you for that. And I know we've spoken about some of the incentives in the past, so thank you for your responses on that as well. Just staying on the capital and investment line, to support economic growth and private investment, NYC EDC provides assistance to projects throughout the city, as you mentioned, on a discretionary basis. How are the 15 new investment projects in fiscal year 21 selected? And then how do they fit into the city's larger economic development plan and COVID-19 recovery efforts?
Thank you for the question, Chair Farias. The capital generally for EDC is a collaborative effort. It involves extensive conversations at the community level, often through long-term planning processes. A great example there is the very positive work that's been done in Sunset Park, both with Bush and with BAT, and now with the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Another great example is Hunts Point. Part are initiatives driven out of City Hall that have citywide impact. So obviously, life sciences is a great example there. In terms of the specific 15 projects in our budget this year, I'm going to ask my colleague Joshua Kraus, Director of Capital Implementation, to respond.
Yes, hello. We always work with the administration and with the council to identify the best projects that will have the deepest and widest impact to help drive the recovery of New York City. Beyond that, I'm happy to pass to my colleagues either in the initiatives or the budget department.
Sure, and as you folks are unmuting, I just want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Pierina Sanchez, who has also joined us.
If I may speak to one of those projects, I'd love to talk a bit about offshore wind, which is an example of a ground up effort in New York City, where we are incubating an industry from the very start, where we are leveraging federal investment, state investment, and $191 million in New York City investment in a project that will create 13,000 jobs, create $1.1 billion in economic activity, and ensure that 40% of the job and investment benefits are directed toward women, minorities, and environmental justice communities. And on top of the environmental benefits that our president mentioned. And I just want to highlight this because this is really an example where we are arm in arm with the community every step of the way in terms of our advisory board, in terms of our workforce planning efforts, in terms of making sure that the jobs that are created by this growing important industry are equitably distributed to the communities that need it most. And I feel like that is a really great example of where we've learned how to use our toolkit of workforce development, of seeding innovation, of place-based initiatives, and wrapping it together in an effort that will bring an equity-driven solution to our communities.
Thank you for that. Sorry, were you going to? Someone else going to say something? Well, thank you for adding that in about the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. I think I got that acronym right. I would agree. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I'm hoping that a lot of the projects that then get implemented, the other 14 are in similar efforts and vein with working directly with communities and local workforce and hire and all of that good stuff. So I'm looking forward to hearing about all the other projects. So, the COVID-19 really damaged our healthcare system and our economy, as we all have seen over the last 2.5 years in our communities. NYC EDC has been supporting the citywide response to COVID-19 in numerous ways, as we've mentioned. What areas has the agency's response recently been focused on in either you can say the last couple months into the new year or from the fall on to now?
Yeah, I'll highlight, thank you for the question, Chair Farias. I'll highlight two key areas for us now and into future years, because these are long-term investments. I'll actually mention three. One is rebuilding our hospital system. I think there's been a broad recognition of the importance of having a strong hospital network. Once again, we saw how first responders heroically step to the fore, and hospitals across the city. And the capital investment needs to continue to flow into those facilities to modernize them, make sure they have the latest equipment, and premises that are worthy of the important work they're doing. So a huge portion of our capital budget is going into hospital upgrades. There are ongoing conversations, really mostly driven at the community level with EDC, about better access to community clinics and care. And then the third, I would say, is really long-term, which is once again driving our life sciences industry. New York City generally in a pandemic is always going to get hit very, very hard, perhaps hardest because of our density, because of our connectedness. And therefore, we need to be on the cutting edge of developing responses to that. And in fact, we are currently in development for a pandemic crisis response unit in partnership with health and hospitals.
Great, thank you. So in terms of, being cutting edge and responding as a city, as you mentioned, I have some questions around, or a question around revenue. What are the different sources of revenue for NYC EDC? How has the pandemic impacted revenue collection by NYC EDC, and consequently the agency's contribution to the general fund?
Thank you for the question. The overwhelming amount of funds that EDC operates on year to year come from the assets that we manage, the 64 million square feet of space, some which we actively manage, some which we have land leases on. And in addition, there's a smaller amount that comes through real estate transactions that we lead. But the bulk of it is from the real estate we control. That is what drives our annual budgeting. There's a much smaller amount typically that comes through the general fund, through tax levy, for specific programming. So like all organizations, public and private, in the last couple of years, it's been a tough go. It required us to significantly reduce overall headcount by about 50 positions, mostly through attrition. And on top of that, for the city levy, tax levy funds we receive, we also had a 3% peg, like city agencies, and that was about $1.5 million on top of that. Typically, you want to be running a positive cash balance at the end of the year. We ran a small negative cash balance, small in the total scheme of our budget, about $4 million last year. That is not ideal. It's also not the first time it's happened, but it is not ideal. And we look forward as the economy rebounds, as the tenancies that we have in our many assets rebound and are able to fulfill their rent obligations, that we will dig ourselves out of that hole quickly. We're very proud, in addition to the work we did with many of our tenants and other businesses around PPE, manufacture and development, and supporting the healthcare system. We're proud of how we worked with them in many cases to bridge them over some very painful months. I saw this in the private sector very, very clearly in my last job, but the team at EDC here in the last couple of years really worked hard to help bridge our tenants through the pandemic crisis. But for us, that meant some lower revenue over the last 2 years.
Okay, so generally, I'm just going to ask, and from what I'm hearing, is you're saying one of the contributors to the losses have been because of rent or because of accommodating. Has there I know there's been a net revenue generated, a loss in net revenue generated post contributions to the general fund. Is that the only reason, or is that like the main contributing reason?
That's the primary reason.
Primary reason. Got it. Okay, thank you so much for that response. Switching gears a little bit, the pandemic has obviously deeply impacted the city's economy and left the tourism and hotel industry on the verge of collapse. How is NYC EDC continuing to make sure that tourism, arts and culture, live entertainment, and performance venues are part of the long-term recovering strategy? I think it's something at the top of everyone's brain as New York City is coming back and we're seeing a lot of people outside. We're not necessarily seeing all of that coming back into some of our venues.
Thank you, Chair Farias. A few points there, and you're absolutely right. Tourism is fundamental to our economy in New York City and driving the revenues that support the general fund and all the other good things that New York City government supports in partnership with the City Council. So thank you for recognizing that. It is critical, is a key part of the mayor's blueprint in terms of cranking up our economic engines. And we're going to be working very closely with NYC and Company that takes the lead primarily on tourism outreach, but we are a close collaborator with them in terms of marketing campaign, in terms of support for Broadway through unique ticketing programs to get people back in theaters on a low-cost basis. Another key element of our efforts there are in cleaning up our core business districts, and that's not just those core business districts in Manhattan where the bulk of the tourism is, but across the city. And we do that through Clean NYC, a program at EDC where since 2016, we've collected over 300,000 pounds of trash, covering 1,500 miles of city blocks. We have 21 distinct cleaning routes across the 5 boroughs. You know, for all of us coming back to work physically, and I look forward to working with all of you in person in the coming months. Hopefully this is the last time we have to do this on Zoom. You know, when you're out and about, you expect a certain level of cleanliness. That's going to help get our folks back to the office. It's also going to make New York City a much more attractive place for people to come. On the culture front, we're very proud of a lot of the capital investments that come through EDC that are culture specific in terms of community facility and reopening it, whether it's Coney Island activities that are going to be reopening soon, or the new Charleston Library on Staten Island. I spent 9 years early in my career working for the New York Public Library, mostly on branch library renovations, and I know how critically important those can be as community downtown anchors. So we're thrilled to be doing projects like that. All of those pieces fit together to have New York come roaring back from a tourism point of view.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in well, obviously in tourism and seeing our city come back, but also focusing on job growth and that aspect of, you know, revitalizing or bringing back our economy. How does the NYC EDC see its role in generating stronger job growth as the city comes out of the pandemic? And what indicators does NYC EDC use internally to measure its impact on the city's broader economy?
Thank you for the question, Chair Farias. That goes to our bread and butter and the core of what we do and have done here for years and want to be continuing to do in a smart, targeted, and equitable way, working with you and the committee members over the next few years. But a few of the things that are top of mind there. One is the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center. It is maybe little known how critical that facility is to our city's well-being. 25% of all the food that gets onto our plates comes through there, whether it's to a restaurant or groceries or wholesale. There are 2,500 jobs there today. There's a 700,000 square foot facility that was built in 1967 and has been outdated for a very, very long time. There is a very serious environmental problem around the idling of trucks there using fossil fuel generation, which has had a very negative impact locally and more broadly. These are all things that the mayor feels very strongly about addressing. People have been talking about it for a long time. I was thrilled that just in my first week here, he dropped on my plate the challenge of getting that facility rebuilt, and I mean that seriously, because for the last 20 years of my career, that's been sort of fundamental to what I have been focused on in terms of modernizing industrial commercial centers. And so I'm thrilled to have that challenge. It's going to take more than 100 million. It's going to take partnership. It's going to take investment from the private sector. It's going to take partnership at the state and federal level. But we're thrilled to be diving into that project, and we'll be coming back to this committee for regular reports. Secondly, I just want to emphasize again, and I don't think you can say it enough, about the offshore wind industry, really something that in some ways came out of nowhere, and kudos for so many people on this committee and others in elective office who've been advocating for very aggressive reductions to our fossil fuel reliance over many years. And that led to really this industry appearing almost overnight in terms of the state government putting out power purchase agreements to buy offshore wind, generating immediately a multi-billion-dollar market, mostly for international offshore wind developers to come in. That positioned EDC very smartly to look to sites like the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, where you could stage and assemble the various component parts before they are floated 15 to 30 miles offshore and put into the water. And that industry alone, as my colleague Faith Penn said, is going to generate 13,000 jobs and over $80 billion of economic impact. We need to stay focused on that. Life sciences has been a generational focus, really going back a long way. Over the last 8 years, that commitment continued, and it continues again with Mayor Adams with our $1 billion life sciences initiative. Like everything that the mayor and the deputy mayor have focused on, and that we are committed to here at EDC, this is going to be done with an eye towards equity in terms of access to venture capital, startup capital, to allow a more diverse set of entrepreneurs and ownership to get into that space. This is something that's just starting, but we're deeply committed to in the coming years, and hope you will hold us accountable on, because it is just so important to the future of our city and building generational wealth in every neighborhood across the city. And, we're also committed to, while there's obviously a heavy density of life sciences in Manhattan due to the location of so many of our hospitals and research centers, this is something that we want to spread to every borough, and have already begun through strategic investments and partnerships in places like South Brooklyn and Long Island City and Montefiore up in the Bronx. So those are a few key examples that we're really focused on. I would also add just one other area where there is work to do, and hope to work with you on it as well, but is the broader clean tech, green tech industry. And those businesses that will evolve are going to have to evolve very, very quickly around how to meet important requirements like Local Law 97 with building retrofits. There is so much more we can do on things like solar. It's almost anemic, the number of solar panels in New York City today. We need to do more there, working together in the future.
Yeah, equity, access, accountability, those are like my government love languages. So I appreciate you saying all of that. And I look forward to working on really expanding some of the things you latter said, like solar in our communities, to the through a lot of our initiatives, hopefully in the city. You know, as you mentioned, NYCDC manages a lot of projects, but it's also managing capital projects for other agencies. How many capital projects is NYEDC managing for other agencies in this plan? And how do we decide which agencies and what projects to work on?
Thank you for the question. So in FY22, just zooming out a little bit, our total capital budget is $2.2 billion. That's 290 active projects. So that's not just the new ones we talked about earlier, and we'll get back to you in more detail on those 15 projects, but 290 ongoing active projects. And there's nearly $9 billion in the 10-year capital plan. Of that, about 66% we're doing on behalf of other city agencies. 33% are more directly EDC or City Hall driven. So a very significant number. And, you know, this is really something that's evolved over the last 20 years. And I think it is really a testament to the quality of the team that we've built here and our ability to expeditiously, relatively speaking, get capital projects done. And that means that elected officials often come to us because they want their library built faster or better, or cultural institutions the same. And, you know, I would also say, just going back to my earlier testimony about our MWBE contracting process, we really excelled there now with about 45% of the dollar value going to MWBEs. That is a very impressive number. And, you know, I'd say also we developed a program called Construct NYC that really hones in on supporting small MWBEs to grow in capacity. And of the 239 million that we awarded MWBEs, 89 of those awards, about 50 million, come from that smaller group. They were really trying to scale up these companies.
Great, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge Councilmember Gutierrez. Jen Gutierrez has joined us. And I know I have colleagues that are eager to ask questions, so I just have a few more and then we can get to those. Let's talk about one of my favorite things, the ferry, citywide ferry service. So I'm just gonna ask questions, and then if you need me to double back on them, let me know. So how did the pandemic impact ridership on the ferry service? What's the plan and timeline for expansion, if so, of the ferry system? And how many of those landings are new in fiscal year 2022?
Thank you for the question, Chair Farias. It's, you know, having been a lifelong New Yorker, I have to say this is one of the great improvements to the city in my lifetime. And, you know, again, kudos to the team here in launching this in 2017. And really managing it, I believe, superbly over the last 4 or 5 years through some trying times. As I said earlier in my testimony, we've reached over 22 million riders in the first 4 years. They cover 70 nautical miles, 25 landings in 5 boroughs now. If you look globally, it is one of the biggest urban ferry systems anywhere. And we're proud of that. The pandemic was tough on ferry service, no doubt. We went from a peak of about 6 million annual riders pre-pandemic to 4.5 million. What has been great to see happening in the last couple of months is people quickly coming back to the ferries as they get more comfortable getting out and about. And we're up to north of 90% of our previous ridership pre-pandemic. So if you look more broadly at other city transportation services, specifically subways and buses, where our return customers are coming at a much faster rate. Obviously, as a New Yorker, I hope everybody comes back onto the subway and bus system as well, because mass transit more broadly is the lifeblood from an economic development point of view for the city. But we're also super happy and mindful of the fact that 80% of the folks who use the ferry system today are New Yorkers. We absolutely have acknowledged in recent years publicly that the system needs to be expanded to communities that haven't been reached. And so we're really proud in the last year to expand it up in the Bronx to stops like Soundview and also to St. George and Staten Island. Look, a strong case can be made for the importance of this system. It's also been well documented that it is an expensive system to run. And so we're currently in conversations with our colleagues in City Hall and in DOT about how to best manage the system going forward. It's something the mayor has spoken about publicly and committed to coming out with a new approach in the coming weeks and months about how we manage the system. And obviously part of that will be answering questions about issues like expansion. So I'm going to defer on that one until we work through the process and look forward to more conversations with you on it offline.
I made the common mistake of talking while muted. It's been long to make that mistake. Can you talk a little bit about the city funds being used for the project? What is the breakdown between revenue streams from fares to concessions to city subsidies?
Sure. So part of the nimbleness of EDC has been the revenue that we generate through our assets. That really helped us get the service up and running quickly. As has been well documented, the city has kicked in more funding from a tax levy point of view, which has been important in getting us through the COVID time period. What role that plays in the future in terms of tax levy dollars is exactly what we're discussing with our colleagues. And so, we're going to defer on any commitments around that because candidly, that's a work in progress. But we look forward to coming back to you on it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that response. According to the land sale list published as part of your investments projects report, NYCDC has sold 50 plots of city land and leased 96 plots over time, including one in fiscal year 2021. These sales were associated with projects called Civic Center Community Group, Broadway LLC, and Bartlett Dairy Inc. Can you provide us with any additional details regarding these sales?
Let me talk more broadly about sales, and I think at its core, particularly in the last 8 years with the prior administration, where there was a heavy focus on driving housing development, particularly affordable housing development, I suspect that a number of those transactions were connected with that, and we're proud of the fact that that work is in the process of resulting in 6,000 new affordable units of housing. In terms of those three specifics, I will go back and check with the team and come back to you.
Great. I'd love to discuss that more at a future time. We're in a moment, as we mentioned, there's lots of different industries or different models of workforce, cooperative models that we could be looking at for using city land. So I'd love to keep talking about that. And lastly, I'd love to touch base on the economic blueprint. So last week, as you mentioned, Mayor Adams released the economic blueprint for the city. How can we expect to see NYC EDC's budget change to reflect these new priorities?
Thank you for that question. The most significant change is the $140 million associated with Hunts Point. So again, there'll be regular reporting back to you and your committee members on progress there. There are going to be dollars associated with the Clean Downtown Streets initiative There will be some dollars associated with the kit of parts around supporting restaurants with streetscape improvements to facilitate outdoor dining. But all of that is in process. So the mayor and the deputy mayor laid out a broad and very broad portfolio of initiatives. And we're currently working with them on timing and dollars associated with all of them. So there'll be much to report in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, great. Are there currently any new capital investments and initiatives that the agency will undertake as outlined in the blueprint?
Big one being Hunts Point again by far.
Okay. The blueprint specifically aims to accelerate the return to pre-pandemic employment levels. What role do you see or will the NYEDC play in achieving this?
This is again at the core of what we do. And going back to your prior question about some of the land dispositions with a focus on housing, we are eager to keep working with communities. And Hunts Point Forward being a perfect example, the Inwood rezoning being a perfect example, the Jamaica Now being a perfect example, where we dive in deep to understand community needs and wants at the local level, but then develop a suite of initiatives off of that, whether it's infrastructure or culture or parks or commercial buildings or housing. My particular focus and background, and it's going to be something that I come back to over and over again in terms of where I really want to drive things here and where I believe Mayor Adams is very focused, is on job creation, good paying job creation that provides pathways, career pathways, that provides training around it to get people into those industries, but that also has avenues for entrepreneurial opportunities. That is as broad-based as possible. We're just scratching the surface of what we can do there. And I mentioned in my testimony a couple of the initiatives with New Lab and others around BIPOC investment in sectors that matter for the future. I think we can be doing more there. And that's going to be a very, very high priority for me. And I know it's a very high priority for the mayor.
Thank you for that. And lastly, can you tell us a little bit more about NYC Strategy for Equity and Economic Development, also known as SEED Fund, which is a new equitable capital planning framework to invest city resources into neighborhood needs?
Thank you for the question. I am just getting up to speed on that. So my preference would be to come back to you with a full-blown response as opposed to give it to you piecemeal now.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you for that. And I look forward to your response. And with that, I will turn it back over to my moderator as my line of questioning is over or final.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If any council member have questions for the administration, please use the Zoom raise hand function now and you'll be added to the queue. As a reminder, council members have 3 minutes for their questions, and this includes answers. Please wait for the sergeant at arms to tell you when your time begins. The sergeant will then let you know when your time is up. We will now hear from Councilmember Salamanca, followed by Councilmember Kagan and Councilmember Aviles.
Your time will begin.
All right, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
How are you? First, I want to congratulate you, Madam Chair, on your first official oversight hearing and the preliminary budget. Congratulations. Second, welcome. It's good seeing you again, President Kimball. And it was great seeing you last week at the announcement with the mayor. I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to get straight to my questioning. So last week, the mayor announced $140 million investment in Hunts Point, $100 million for the Hunts Point markets and $40 million for the Hunts Point Forward plan. Can you briefly update me? Where are we with providing or building the Hunts Point produce market with a brand new state-of-the-art facility?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Salamanca, and thank you for your leadership at this point. It was it was great being with you there, hearing about your family history connected to Hunts Point, specifically your father working there, I think for 18 years.
Yes.
Impressive, and just is a reflection of the importance of facilities like that in terms of local job opportunities. So, as I said, the $100 million is a very significant down payment on a new facility, but it's not going to be enough. We are in active conversations right now with a potential development partner and with the members of the Hunts Point Food Co-op, the businesses at the end of the day that have to function out of there, about the scope of that project, about the design of it, about the sustainability around it, things we care about a lot. That will result in a design that will give us a better sense of the total cost, which will not be $100 million. I can guarantee you that is going to be significantly more. And that's the point in which we're going to have to figure out, okay, of that total number, how much is being driven by the private sector, how much is the city, how much is the state, frankly, and how much is the federal government? Because I believe that this facility, I know that this facility is not just critical infrastructure from a health and sustainability point of view for the city of New York, but also for the state of New York. There's scores of upstate farms that are critical, that they critically rely on the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center. And I would argue it's a national project because there are farms all over the country that supply food to Hunts Point. And New York City really should have a state-of-the-art modern facility there. So we're going to be coming back to you regularly with updates. I think, you know, from our past experience together, I believe deeply in transparency and delivering the good news and the bad news if at times that has to come. But I'm also going to need your help and the committee's help. I know the mayor is as well at leveraging some of those additional dollars.
Quickly, before you go, I move on to the 40 million. I know that past mayors have allocated funding to the Hunts Point markets. I know Mayor Bloomberg did, and I know Mayor de Blasio did. Where is this? Where are these dollars that they allocated, and how much do we have in total, including that 100 million that the mayor allocated?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Salmak. It's an excellent one. There have been previous commitments. The vast majority of that money has been spent for improvements at the meat market, spent for improvements like the rail system that runs through there. That's important in terms of moving goods. There is some leftover dollars. I don't have an exact number for you right now, but we absolutely will be looking to transfer any dollars that were left over from past projects into the new one because the food distribution center is our top priority right now.
And then I had asked questions about the $40 million for the Hunts Point Forward Plan. Where is that funding going? And then I'm just going to throw two other things. I know my time is up. And then I'm just curious to know La Peninsula, La Pen, the former Spofford facility. That's an EDC project. La Central, that's also an EDC project. Two massive development projects in my council district. You started on phase one on both projects. They've almost been completed, at least in La Peninsula. I know La Central phase one has been completed, but HPD has not closed on phase two. So what is EDC going to do as an agency to lean on HPD so that we can close on these projects? Given the fact that back in 2016 and 2017, we agreed to a certain rent in terms of the AMIs, and now we're in 2022, and we know that the AMIs have changed. They've in terms of the rents going up, and therefore the rents that we promised the communities to approve these projects back in 2016, 2017 are totally different than the rents when we close now in 2022 or 2023. So how are we going to address these issues?
Thank you for the question, Council Member. Yeah, the Spofford project is a fantastic one. Thank you for your leadership pushing that. As you know, significant progress has been made. I love the fact that this is kind of, in my view, smart development. It's got both housing and jobs, training associated with it. neighborhood amenities associated with it. This is the first I'm hearing of the HPD situation, but I can guarantee you I'm going to follow up on that issue as quickly as I can and get back to you.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm going to be respectful of the time. I do have more questions about the $40 million in Hunts Point, but I'll come back in round two. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
We will now hear from Councilmember Kagan, followed by Councilmember Aviles and Councilmember Gutierrez.
Time will begin.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair Faris. Amazing hearing, very important. In general, economic development, especially now, is crucial for the recovery of New York City. I have a question to economic development. Number one, I have in fact two questions. One question is like, are we using the talent and intelligence and creativity of New Yorkers in moving New York City out of this pandemic and supporting all of these economic development projects? Do we have an option to do it like maybe on a website, maybe an outreach? So people have a lot of great, absolutely amazing, wonderful ideas how to improve New York City, how to bring more revenues. By the way, thank you so much for your outreach to my office, and I'm looking forward to meet you and to have a site tour in Coney Island. We have a lot of issues in Coney Island. And I'll give you a hint. For example, we have an abandoned shore theater hotel at Silville Avenue. It's a landmark building, and before the pandemic, it was an idea to transform it into modern hotel, for example. But because of the pandemic, it didn't work out. But my point is, again, we have millions of talented, amazing, smart people who can bring so many good ideas to move our city forward. And I'm ready to share some of the ideas my constituents shared with me, and I believe we are not using this potential.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Kagan. I'm really looking forward to working with you. I'm a Brooklyn resident. Spent a lot of time in Coney Island, both as an adult and with my kids over the years. Love the improvements there, but also want to work with you to take it to the next level. I'm familiar with the Shore Hotel. It is a beautiful building. We've got to work with you to figure out a good outcome there. In terms of your question about really engaging with all New Yorkers on this recovery, I couldn't agree with you more. Much of that happens at the community level. Much of it happens because of leadership by members of the city council like yourself. So I'm eager to come out to Coney Island and sit with you and any other members of the community and hear your good ideas. I think more globally, we're at an important inflection point for the city. Not just to build back the economy, but to build it back better and stronger. We're at a point where there is broad recognition, a recognition that should have been there years ago, but clearly is now, about past inequities and the importance of reaching communities across the city, of strengthening our healthcare system, diversifying our economy. I think there is a civic spirit right now in terms of this moment of coming back from the pandemic, where people really want to serve, whether they're in the private sector, the public sector, or in government. And part of our job at EDC is to bring those groups together to come up with the best ideas. So a couple of examples there. We have a fantastic life sciences advisory council. We have an advisory council on offshore wind. I want to develop one more specifically on green tech, clean tech. And there are a number of examples there. We really need to tap into that civic spirit. I think the private sector is eager to invest again and eager to invest here in New York City. And honestly, over the last couple of years, you've seen a real retrenchment in terms of private sector investment. I think that's going to change. One other point I just want to add there, that we're very proud of the business development unit we have here that reaches out locally around retention projects. So helping companies like JetBlue and Steinways and Crystal Palace understand the value proposition of staying in New York. But we want to reach out nationally. We want to reach out internationally to tell New York's story. and to bring more companies here.
And meanwhile, please reach out to New Yorkers again. We have so many talented, creative people. We have a lot of brilliant ideas to help to bring more revenues to New York City and to move our city out of this pandemic.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We will now hear from Councilmember Aviles, followed by Councilmember Gutierrez and Councilmember Sanchez.
Time will begin.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations, Madam Chair, on your first hearing. It's been really good. And congratulations, Andrew. Good to see you. I'm going to talk to you about, you know nothing about, teasing, Sunset Park. I guess I have a two-part question, and sadly, we don't have enough time, but we'll have more conversation. As you know, and everyone knows here, our district, right, is part of a significant maritime industrial use. We have an abundance of water. We have experienced a proliferation of last mile warehouse facilities, and these are not normal warehouses. These are gargantuan facilities that have been primarily concentrated in Red Hook. We have 5 facilities in a very small geographic area and one ginormous facility that is coming up in Sunset, which will be the biggest, over 6 million square feet of space dedicated to this usage. Our community has seen, you mentioned the injustice of idling trucks. We are an environmental justice community. And with these clustering of these facilities that have been built as of right, on the water, we have seen no dedication to the development of water freight and using the water. Rather, our community is being inundated with trucks and will be inundated with even more trucks. Some are estimating 3,000 trucks additional a day. And we're talking about monster tractor trailers, not in addition to the small vehicles and the smaller delivery vehicles, which we're already kind of choking under. So under that context, I wanted to know if EDC, number one, has plans for putting any capital investment and really pushing, using the power of the agency to invest in marine freight highway, given these facilities are all on the water. And secondly, how can we partner? Number one, we are bearing a disproportionate burden of these facilities in a very small geographic community that is an environmental justice community with the highest rates of asthma. How can we move forward to ensure that our community gets the investment and protections that it currently needs?
Thank you, Councilmember Aviles, and I am very eager to be working with you in this new capacity and very excited about the opportunities in your district. So look forward to touring it with you, spending time. Obviously, I was up close and personal watching some of the work that you did in the past as a community leader, that the task force has gotten done, the community-driven task force with EDC. And it is truly impressive, the focus and investment going on at the Made in New York campus and also at SBMT. So kudos to you for your work there. The question of freight transportation is a critical one. I believe that short sea shipping, getting trucks off of I-95 and the highways and onto barges along our coastlines is absolutely critical, and that helps on the last mile distribution issue. Also, inter-harbor movement of freight goods, absolutely critical. EDC's freight transportation unit is all over this, and we look forward to sitting down with you specifically on this topic and getting into detail. I would just say also on the last mile distribution facilities, I have seen those facilities go up. We need to be engaged with you and others in the community where there are vacant industrial sites in figuring out how we work together to generate outcomes other than last mile distribution centers. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Yeah, and none of the facilities are building with the anticipation of using the water. They're saying the city needs to invest in being able to prepare our waterfront for this kind of usage. And the companies, hand over foot, wealthy, very, very wealthy companies, we're playing patsy back and forth. So I look forward to more conversations, because we cannot take any more of these facilities. Our health is here truly on the line. We are the site of the most disproportionate element. And I'm also concerned about how these facilities impact the industrial manufacturing sector as a whole, because we need to support a more robust sector and not have these outsized facilities like just gobble up all of our land and resources. So I look forward to working with you some more on these issues. And I will cede my time because I know there's a lot of other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Gutierrez, followed by Councilmember Sanchez and Councilmember Riley.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Farias, for doing an awesome job chairing your first hearing. It's an honor to share this space with everyone. I have two questions, and I know there's a lot, so I will be relatively quick. Mine are district specific, so I understand if you can't respond right away. My first one is if you can share the status of the capital investment to Moore Street Market, aka La Marqueta in Williamsburg. Roughly over 2.7 million was allocated from then Borough President Eric Adams and previous council member Reynoso back in FY19. And the money is pretty significant amount is intended to kind of upgrade the space. And so I'd love to know what the status is. There are some great programming and great initiatives happening at the market. It was the hub of food distribution throughout the pandemic, and is still very much the center of preservation in Williamsburg, which is experiencing rapid gentrification. And my second question is related to manufacturing. If there's anything that you can share about a longer term manufacturing retention plan, specifically to support our IBCs, even more specifically to support the Williamsburg IBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. I really look forward to working with you. Really eager to come and tour the Moore Street Market with you. What I do know from the past 20 years of my work in economic development is the importance that marketplaces like this can play in a local community, a real anchor for other commercial development near it, a real anchor to bring the community together around fresh produce. Food generally is such an important driver of economic development. So we're very eager to continue to work with you on Moore Street more broadly. And in terms of the specific standing of the capital project, let me get back to you with a detailed report on that shortly, and then come and tour it as well. In terms of more broadly on manufacturing, obviously that has been a major focus of mine over the last 17 years at the Brooklyn Navy Yard and Industry City, where millions of square feet of manufacturing has expanded over a 15-year period. These new kinds of manufacturers tend to be very small, very nimble, very design heavy, high touch, often linked to advanced manufacturing. So meaning tech-focused manufacturing in a lot of ways. We need to continue to support that industry growth. Oftentimes, the smaller players will create the ecosystem in which a larger business wants to invest. So we're thrilled, as an example, that at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, there's a new 80,000 square foot tenant that's going to be moving in that we worked with during the pandemic that was not in one of our buildings on PPE production. And they're going to be taking 80,000 square feet to manufacture that there. And I think we all learned the lesson of not having enough local industrial and manufacturing around PPE over the last couple of years. But I'm very eager to work with you and other council members on how we can both work with public assets we control, and also with the private sector, because I actually think there is a growing recognition that the maker community, the manufacturing community, is one that in some cases may pay a little bit less, but can really anchor broader redevelopments and activations, because the reality is, particularly young people, New Yorkers more broadly, but particularly young people, want things made locally. They want them made sustainably. They want to know that the people working at the manufacturing firms are local and are creating career pathways. So I really believe in all of that in my core, and I've seen it work at both the Navy Yard and the public sector, public-private sector there, and then in the full private sector at Industry City. So I'm eager to work with you on that.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Sanchez, followed by Councilmember Riley and Councilmember Salamanca.
Time will begin.
Good morning, President Kimball, and congratulations, Chair Farias, for your first hearing. Incredible job. And President Kimball, really looking forward to working with you again, from RPA times to now. And so my question, I think you'll expect it, given some of my outreach already to your team. But I really wanted to first say how excited I am to hear about investments in Hunts Point and the Bronx. And the Bronx needs a lot of love, needs a lot of attention. And just a little further up north in the Bronx, there is the Kingsbridge Armory, which has really languished, for better terms, over the past 25 years, having intermittent uses, but not really being utilized to its potential in our community. And so understanding that there is some pending sort of discussion, litigation, conversation going on, I really wanted to hear about your approach to sites like the Kingsbridge Armory in terms of, utilizing valuable, incredible city assets to incentivize economic growth, especially in communities like ours. And in the Kingsbridge Armory, looking for your commitment to working together to really realizing a project there. Because I do think that this is the team that can get it done. This council, this administration, this EDC, I think we've got it, and our community is really activated around it. So we'd just love to hear your approach and hopefully a commitment to work together on the Armory.
Thank you so much for that question, Councilmember Sanchez. Yes, and yes. Adaptive reuse of beautiful historic structures like the Kingsbridge Armory are so core to economic development in New York City and elsewhere. Obviously, bringing the Navy Yard back to life with the diversity of buildings there, and also at Industry City, was core to our development strategy. Show off the asset. That's what attracts businesses. That's what attracts the public. That's really the core of how you bring sites to that, like Kingsbridge Armory, back to life. We're proud of the work on a smaller scale, but with other armories like the Bedford Armory. It is frustrating to all of us that project has languished. And so we are very eager to dig in with you, understand your vision, understand the vision of the community there, for how we can tackle, what is a very big but absolutely critical project, and can be an anchor, as you well know, not just for that neighborhood, but for more broadly in the Bronx.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really look forward to working together, and you have an incredible team, and you come with incredible experience. So I really look forward to working together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Riley, followed by Councilmember Salamanca.
Time will begin.
Thank you, Council, and congratulations to our Bronx representative, and Farias, for chairing her first committee hearing. How you doing, President Kimball? I just have a real quick question. I want to piggyback off of my colleagues from the Bronx. Prior to the pandemic, the Bronx unemployment rate was really, really low. It was about, I believe, under 8%. During the pandemic, it rose up to about 24 to 25%. And I believe it's down to 13 or 14% right now. I did hear that you spoke about some jobs that the mayor is trying to bring to New York City, and the career paths that he's trying to bring. I'm just curious to understand which career paths and what type of unemployment rate.
Councilmember Riley, I think we lost you, but I believe the gist of your question is around job creation, the unemployment rate. Yes, we lost close to 1 million jobs in the city at the nadir of the COVID crisis. We're back now to being short several 100,000. Trend lines are in a good direction. For a while there, it wasn't just that there weren't enough jobs, it was that there weren't enough job seekers. I think that's changing now. Part of that is reactivating our public transit system, making sure it's safe, making sure people feel comfortable getting back into the office and workplace again. Things are moving in the right direction, but it is critical that we lay the groundwork now to supercharge the economic activity that's happening in New York. Projects like Hunts Point, projects like Spofford, projects like our government office relocation strategy called Office Anchor, where we look to have a city agency be an anchor for a new commercial building, resulting in a much bigger project where then there is hopefully several 100,000 square feet of additional space that can go for local businesses to expand, are all part of tackling that unemployment and underemployment challenge that we have. Part of it also is workforce development initiatives, and there's a broad slew of those that we're working in partnership with SBS on.
And sorry, thank you so much for that response, President Kimball. Just a point of clarification, because Councilmember Kevin Riley is having a little bit of service issues, as we can tell. Just to follow up on that response, were there any type of career jobs that the Bronx will be able to see, or any technology career pathways created? And if you can just pinpoint, I know you listed a bunch of different types of projects that you will be implementing in the Bronx, but if there's any specific project points that involve technology or different career pathways in your response, if you can highlight that, that would be appreciated.
Great. So thank you for that clarification. Let me just add to that list. Obviously, Spofford, Hunts Point, our Office Anchor project in the South Bronx. I would add to that the important life sciences work we're undertaking with Montefiore to make sure that life sciences, and a big part of life sciences is tech, it's laboratory tech, but that we're bringing that to every corner of the city, including the Bronx. And so we're going to be expanding our partnership with Montefiore and look forward to keeping in regular contact with you all on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Salamanca.
Time will begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Mr. Kimball, I just want to go back to some of my line of questioning in terms of the $140 million that was announced last week. In terms of the $40 million for the Hunts Point Forward Plan, when will the community, how will that work? When will the community start seeing that funding trickling down into Hunts Point?
Thank you for the question. My understanding on where we are in the process is through the Hunts Point Forward community process. Projects were identified, streetscape projects, green space projects, parks projects. Now that the money has been allocated, those projects can move forward in design. So, what I would like to do is get back to you with a detailed capital construction timeline, which includes both design and a projected construction start. So you can know a little bit more specifically when you're going to see the results.
Great. And then finally, my final question is just to talk back about past funding from previous mayors. I'm just concerned about that funding being spent already. I understand that rail was necessary and rail comes into the Hunts Point produce market. But I'm just, if we're building a fund to actually build a new facility for the Hunts Point produce market, right? We have many markets, produce, fish, and meat. I'm just concerned that, we're putting money in, allocating for this project, but it's being tapped into. When are we really going to have the actual funding? When are we going to raise the actual funding so that we can get this project started and completed?
Yeah, I appreciate the line of questioning, and please, just as a general matter, keep it coming. We're going to be open book, totally transparent about what has been invested, what's left over, what we can reallocate to this project. What's critically important now, from my point of view, is getting a project that we can build consensus around, that is a smart project from the EDC standpoint, is embraced by the members of the co-op, is embraced by the union as a key stakeholder there, is embraced by you and other community members. That's going to have a dollar amount associated with it. We're going to all have to lock arms around that dollar amount and then come up with a strategy for how we're going to leverage the rest of it. And so, all I can tell you, council member, is that this is one of my top priorities. I'm going to have a team at EDC that's cross-departmental, focused on this, and we're going to be in regular communication with you in the community and the co-op on it.
All right. And then my last question is, where are we with Freight NYC?
So Freight NYC is a critically important initiative for us. Going back to Councilmember Avilas's question, moving goods in a more environmentally sound fashion, whether it's by truck or by rail or by water, is a critical long-term issue for the city. It's one that we've got a team very focused on here. And what I would like to do, since I'm still getting up to speed on all the elements of that, is come back to you and Councilmember Avilas and others who are interested in this topic with a more detailed response.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Brewer.
Thank you very much. My quick question, I think it hasn't been asked because I've been in and out, is I just came from the National League of Cities, and mostly it was about funding. There are obviously 2,000 people there from small towns and big cities, but this is a pretty much of a softball question, but there is so much money available from the Biden administration. Some of it obviously categorical, you get it no matter what, but there's just an awful lot to be applied for. Much of it is economic development. So my question is, either for you and or collaborating with your sister agencies, is there already a discussion about applying for these billions of dollars? Needless to say, that was my job during the Dinkins administration. So I know that if you apply, you often get. But is that something that's on your radar? And if not, will it be? And what is your approach to this money coming from Washington?
Councilmember Brewer, thank you for the question. It is great to be working with you again. It's been maybe 25 years since we worked on branch libraries in your district, and I know
25 years.
that you are a great partner and know how to get things done. 100%. It was one of the first questions I asked the team here. It was one of the first questions I asked the mayor, the deputy mayor. Please rest assured, we are all over this issue. It is a unique opportunity. And, you know, I am still learning the intricacies of what is eligible, what's not eligible. And Joshua Kraus here on our senior team, we have one of the savviest capital project people around. He is part of an interagency task force. I also have a set of relationships there that I'll be calling on at the state and federal level. I would hope that there is a whole slew of projects that we can go after with this infrastructure money. And so we'll be coming back to you, but please feel free to keep the heat on us on that topic.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair, it appears that no other council members have raised their hands to ask questions.
I just have two last follow-up revenue-based questions, if you don't mind, President Kimball. Just hearing all of the dialogue that's been going on and going back to the reserve conversation, are there reserves that the agency falls on when there's a loss in revenue? And in the revenue contributed by NYCEDC to the general fund, ferry net operating losses that are associated with the subsidy calculation is factored in. Does the agency see this amount rising in the next few years?
That's part of the evaluation that we're undertaking right now working with our colleagues in city government and city hall, which is how we deal with the expense associated with the system right now. How can we lower those expenses? Where will they potentially rise in the future? And how will that get funded? And who will manage it directly on an ongoing basis? So all of those questions are on the table right now, and we'll be needing to get back to you on.
Okay, great. And then in terms of the life science facilities, the life science initiative plans to invest $500 million, as you mentioned, in the life sciences in New York City over 10 years. What's the funding for this in the fiscal 2023 plan? And are there any incentives being provided to attract investment in commercial lab space in New York City?
Yes, for sure on the last question. It's actually the total number is $1 billion. It's a 10-year commitment. 260 million of that has been committed already. About 100 million to applied research and development for 4 projects, including at BAT and PRI. 150 million for commercial wet lab space at Cure and Labs. And 10 million, and this is a really important one and impressive to me and something I want to grow, but 10 million for internships and the biolabs, wet labs incubator. Internships, in my view, being one of the best ways to get the next generation of diverse entrepreneurs into that sector.
I agree. Internships to full employment sounds great to me across the board. With that, those are the last questions that I have. I'll pass it back to the moderator.
Thank you, Chair. We will now turn to the public testimony. I'd like to remind everyone that unlike our typical council hearings, we'll be calling individuals one by one to testify. We'll be limiting public testimony today to 2 minutes each. Please begin once the sergeant has started the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function, and I'll call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set the timer and give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. We will now hear from Ben Fuller-Guins, followed by Francisco Tecapo and Valerie White. Mr. Fuller-Guins, you may begin when ready.
Your time will begin.
Mr. Filipowens, you've been unmuted. You may speak when ready.
Beautiful. Good morning. Thank you so much, Chair Farias and council members of the committee for offering me time to speak this morning. My name is Ben Fuller-Guggens. I'm with the Carroll Gardens Association. We're a member of the New York City Coalition for Domestic Work. Our coalition, we formed last year with the New York City Domestic Worker Alliance, ADICAR, Hands in Hands, the Domestic Employers Network. We represent over 30,000 domestic workers and employers across New York City. And I'm here this morning to request your support for our domestic worker and employer empowerment initiative. This will be a new City Council initiative for FY23 that will provide much needed funding to support outreach, education, and enforcement and training to over 5,000 domestic workers in this year alone. There are over 200,000 domestic workers in New York City, largely immigrant women who are taking care of our children, our homes, and elderly. Unfortunately, many of these jobs, while they're so essential, are often underpaid, or workers are experiencing wage theft, harassment, discrimination. And so our initiative that we're proposing, requesting $300,000, will be able to provide critical training and outreach to these workers across the city to make sure that they have quality jobs, they're able to enforce their rights, and be able to continue providing care for our children and elderly in our homes across the city. Right now we have the passage of Intro 339. There's a press conference going on with other council members joining. And this is such a critical moment where we have new laws and legislation being extended for domestic workers. And our initiative is going to be working to make sure that workers know their rights so they're able to feel valued and dignified in their jobs, and be able to provide good quality jobs to our families and homes across the city. So I look forward to working with this committee and supporting domestic worker rights. And I hope you support our initiative, the Domestic Worker and Employer Empowerment Initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now hear from Francisco Tecaco, followed by Valerie White and Angel Yin.
Your time will begin.
Good morning. My name is Francisco Tecaisco. I am the Worker Rights Coordinator at New Immigrant Community Empowerment, or NICE. We're grateful to share our testimony on behalf of organizations, the thousands of immigrants, day laborers, and families in New York City. We urge the City Council to invest in the Day Labor Workforce Initiative, the Low Wages Worker Support, and the Construction Site Safety Training to continue the work that organizations such as NICE provide to over 15,000 immigrant workers per year. Immigrant workers are essential to New York City economic recovery. They build construction sites, deliver food, clean houses, buildings, and hospitals, and continue to do so as the city reopens. On day laborers' corners, known as paradas, day laborers lack access to workforce developer training, shelter, water, and bathrooms. The goal of the Day Labor Initiative is to work together with NICE and address issues by creating access to good jobs, training on safety and legal rights, and a dignified space for day laborers looking for work. Every year, over 7,500 workers use NICE Job Center, and we dispatch over 1,200 dignified jobs per year. With the city cleanup crops, NICE created an apprenticeship program for women workers who harness their skills by rebuilding the homes of New Yorkers affected by Hurricane Ida. So far, 44 women have been trained and have helped rebuild 23 houses, affecting over 100 low-income immigrant community members. The low-wage worker support funding is key so we can meet the increasing demand for wage theft support. Every month, more than 60 workers come to NICE to report cases of wage theft cases. This past year, more than 3,200 workers participated in our construction site safety training. Since the pandemic, NICE have distributed more than $3.3 million in direct cash. Thank you. Cash relief.
Thank you. We will now hear from Valerie White, followed by Angel Yin, and then Roger Thomas.
Hi, good morning. I am Valerie White, the Executive Director of LIST New York City. We are a nonprofit intermediary committed to closing the racial wealth gap and creating a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable New York City through capital investment in economic development and community infrastructure. Thank you to Chair Farias and the rest of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. An equitable and thoughtful approach to economic development is important to driving investment toward our historically underserved neighborhoods. Central to that is ensuring that MWBEs are at the heart of our economic development strategy. These firms have lacked access to resources, capital, networks, and those required to participate in contracting. It is essential that we support these firms, and this support for development of commercial real estate, affordable housing, community infrastructure in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. They also provide viable jobs with career paths for BIPOC individuals and immigrant residents of our city. At LIST NYC, we launched a Developers of Color training program to expand the capacity of MWBEs in the development industry, and we also provide through other government partnership lines of credit to help qualified MWBEs successfully bid and execute construction contracts. Mayor Adams' commitment to raising a threshold for the city contracts that MWBEs can seek from $500,000 to $1.5 million will help those eligible MWBEs compete for more lucrative city contracts. As we wrote in a policy letter to then Mayor-elect Adams back in November, we also believe that public-private partnerships are essential for creating equitable economic development. So we at LIST NYC stand ready to continue our partnership with the new administration at New York City EDC and this committee to help move about economic development and continue our investment in the economic recovery for New York City. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angel Yin, followed by Roger Thomas and Will Spisak.
Your time will begin.
Thank you, Chair Farias and other members of the committee for this opportunity to testify. My name is Angel Yin, and I am the Small Business Program Coordinator at the Asian American Federation. Asian New Yorkers comprise 17% of city's population. Over 280,000 Asian workers keep our city functioning. During the pandemic, the unemployment rate of Asian New Yorkers doubled, but at the same time, our business owners have difficulties hiring. This gap is due to the fact that city's existing workforce development programs do not cater to the language needs, are not financially accessible, and have eligibility requirements that bar participation from undocumented, elder, and disabled Asian workers. The lack of in-language outreach and assistance efforts for LEP business owners continue to hamper economic recovery. We applaud the introduction of programs like SBS Small Business Resiliency Grant or DOF's Fine Reduction Program to support small business. The problem is in-language materials regarding new regulations and how to get fines reduced were offered much later than English materials, and outreach efforts were limited to online webinars, barring participation from LEP owners who struggle in the digital divide. Importantly, in light of the Atlanta Spa shooting anniversary today, I would emphasize the continued threat of anti-Asian hate on local economic activity. Hate crime is causing a significant drop in consumer spending in Asian commercial corridors, leaving them relatively empty even now. Hence, AAF requests that the City Council first center the economic recovery on the working class and in local neighborhoods. Second, strengthen communication and interaction among city agencies and the community. Third, invest in community-based, culturally competent programs with a focus on small business support and workforce development. And lastly, provide stable funding to trusted CBOs to provide reliable services. Thank you.
Thank you for that, moderator. I just have a follow-up question really quickly. Do you have by any chance the average timing on translated materials given back to businesses, workers, etc.?
I'm sorry, I don't have the information right now, but based on my past experience and our work, some of the materials are just like delayed by weeks.
Got it. And in your experience, and it doesn't obviously have to be everyone's experience, in your experience, have the translations actually been suitable in like the most common spoken language?
Well, I would not say every information is being translated in all the languages, but we do see them being translated in the most used languages such as Chinese or Korean, but we would encourage like it's being translated to all kinds of Asian languages.
Okay, and the quality of translation is good? Because I know sometimes I see stuff in Spanish and it's questionable.
Well, to be honest, because I speak Chinese, I think some of the Chinese needs improvements.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We can continue on.
Thank you, Chair. We will now hear from Roger Thomas, followed by Will Spisak and Natalia Guzman Solano.
Madam Chair Fries, members of the committee, my name is Roger Thomas. I am the CEO of Miller Times, a minority Latino returning citizen-owned social equity brand hoping to partake in the cannabis industry that's supposed to create opportunities in our community. I too have been directly impacted by this inequitable prohibition. For the sake of time, I have shortened my testimony to conform to the rules. I have also submitted my full written testimony. I come before this committee today confident that our elected leaders in New York City, the undisputed financial capital of the world, will be able to solve the most pressing issue in this white-dominated cannabis industry. A lack of access to capital is the main barrier that the industry has created that keep Black and brown communities from being entrepreneurs. New York has a very robust and inclusive adult use cannabis law. The law is centered on racial and social justice. The law's goal is to allot 50% of all cannabis license to social equity participants like myself. We believe that New York City Council has a chance to create additional resources to ensure participation from New York City residents. Without the support of the city, current cannabis businesses, which are all white-owned and operating in the city, will expand their footprint and leave those of us who have borne the brunt of the war on drugs at a great disadvantage to compete or even be able to participate because of numerous and biased barriers associated with the industry as a whole. Now that cannabis is legal recreational in New York City, I'm asking this esteemed committee whether we will be treated the same as other small businesses, including restaurants, by being eligible for grants, loans, and technical assistance.
Time has expired.
Therefore, I am requesting that this committee allot $100 million to a cannabis fund. Black and brown communities have always paid their fair share of taxes and deserve the right to have access to grants and loans to open and operate cannabis businesses in New York City. New York City is the financial capital of the world. Grants alone would enable those of us who are still social participants to get access to technical assistance, help with application, real estate, security, inventory. In turn, these cannabis businesses will provide jobs for New York City. In conclusion, I truly believe without reservation that New York City is in a position to move the needle and start a path of equity, inclusion, and fairness for those of us armed by the war on drugs. Participate in new cannabis rush. Thank you, and I'm here for any questions from the committee.
Thank you so much for that testimony. I would like to remind folks to please stay within the 2 minutes, as we have other folks that would like to ask questions or would like to provide testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to now call on Will Spisak, followed by Natalia Guzman Solano and Isna Mujica.
Your time will begin.
Thank you. Hi, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Will Spisak, Senior Program Associate at New Economy Project, a citywide organization that works with community groups to build a just economy that works for all. New Economy Project and 19 partner organizations are part of a citywide Community Land Trust Initiative, or CLT initiative, that seeks $3 million in City Council discretionary funding in fiscal year 23 to develop CLTs and permanently affordable housing, commercial, and community space in all 5 boroughs. CLTs are organizing in Black, Brown, immigrant neighborhoods across New York City to combat speculation and ensure a just economic recovery from the pandemic. We urge the committee to support full funding of $3 million for a citywide CLT initiative this year. CLTs are a flexible and proven model to protect public investment in a wide range of economic development projects. In addition to ensuring permanent affordable housing, CLTs in New York City are also paving the way for an equitable recovery that includes commercial revitalization, manufacturing, and other infrastructure that improves the economic well-beings of our neighborhoods. As community-governed nonprofits, CLTs own land and control the terms on which the land is developed to ensure that development meets community needs. CLTs are already providing a new model for economic development. Cooper Square CLT in Lower Manhattan has 22 commercial spaces on their CLT, providing primarily BIPOC women entrepreneurs with affordable storefronts. In Queens, we have Chaya CDC in Richmond Hill and Western Queens CLT in Long Island City that are organizing and developing community and commercial space to support immigrant-owned small businesses and worker co-ops. And in the South Bronx, Mont Haven Port Morris Community Land Stewards is making progress on converting an old H&H facility into a center for health, education, and the arts. CLTs are a powerful tool to expand community control of land and localize economic development in the wake of the pandemic. We urge City Council to redouble its commitment to CLTs at this critical time, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. We will now hear from Natalia Guzman Solano, followed by Visnia Mujica.
Your time will begin.
Good morning, Committee Chair Farias and members of the committee, and thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Natalia Guzman Solano, and I'm a steering committee member at Western Queens Community Land Trust, which Will Spivak just mentioned in his testimony. So Western Queens Community Land Trust is a grassroots organization that emerged from the struggle to keep Amazon headquarters from expanding into Long Island City and displacing our immigrant Black and Brown small business owners, our residents in the area. Since then, we have continued to organize to propose turning the underutilized Board of Education building in the area into a space that serves community needs in terms of commercial space and tenancy, providing services like child and adult care, a food co-op, and more importantly, affordable rental space for manufacturing, artist studios, and mobile vendor kitchens, among other uses. Western Queens Community Land Trust and 19 partner organizations are part of a citywide community land trust initiative that is seeking $3 million in City Council discretionary funding in fiscal year 2023 to develop CLTs and permanently affordable housing, commercial and community spaces in all 5 boroughs. For this reason, we strongly urge the committee and the council to support full funding of $3 million for the citywide CLT initiative in the 2023 fiscal year budget. This spring, we are completing our feasibility study for the DOE building in Long Island City, and we have continued to do outreach and organizing in our communities, which has resulted in Ravenswood House's residents initiating their own CLT. Just recently, we were able to hire our first staff person, but this was only possible due to City Council discretionary funding. Renewed discretionary funding will build on this tremendous progress as more groups secure legal and technical assistance, launch CLT operations, and sustain comprehensive organizing and community planning, and acquire and steward properties for long-term preservation. CLTs are a powerful tool to expand community control of land and stabilize housing in the wake of the pandemic.
We urge City Council to redouble its commitments to CLTs at this critical time. And thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now hear from Visna Bujika.
Your time will begin.
Good morning, Chair Farias, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We're going to stay on the CLT train for a minute. Somehow we ended up being all in a row. But my name is Vishnya Vuitz. I'm a staff attorney with Take Root Justice in the Equitable Neighborhoods practice. And we are also a member of the CLT Initiative. The CLT Initiative funds 20 organizations, including CLTs, local community-based organizations, as well as technical assistance providers like ourselves, to do the work of CLTs, which is community-controlled local development, where the local communities are really who decides what their needs are and how those needs should be implemented. And as Mr. Kimball discussed, we've realized, it seems EDC has realized, that local everything is the right way to do things, and CLTs are about as local as they get. They're composed of a board that includes local residents of the CLTs, and community advisors. At Take Root Justice, we provide legal services to the CLT members, including technical assistance like trainings about governance and incorporation, but also we provide extensive real estate transactional representation for CLTs who obtain properties. And that legal work is something that is incredibly expensive, and for our partners who get it from us for free, the only way we're able to fund it is with the CLT initiative funding. But as CLTs grow, as we have more CLTs, as they get land, as they have projects, they're going to need more and more support. And that is why we urge the council and this committee to support an expansion of the CLT initiative to $3 million at least. If you want to give us more, that came up in the housing committee yesterday or Monday, we'd happily take it. But we really need this funding to make sure our CLTs are able to do this work in a way that's accountable to the community and that really centers the needs of local communities. And I'm also happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. If there is any panelist that I've inadvertently not called on, please use the Zoom raise hand function now, and I'll call on you to deliver your testimony. Chair, seeing no hands raised, that concludes the public portion of this hearing.
Great, thank you so much, Stephanie. I just want to start off with saying thank you to Andrew Kimball for testifying today and his team at NYC EDC. As they've heard from myself and my colleagues, we're committed to our city's recovery and economic development, but also to the accountability and success of the projects within our communities. I want to say thank you again for NYC EDC's work and commitment to our city. And I look forward to coming back together on all of our follow-up. And then I just want to say thank you for everyone's public testimony. We're committed to all of you and to the issues that were brought forward today in the hearing. Lastly, thank you to all of my colleagues, committee members, and council members that showed up today to join the hearing. And shout out to the best committee staff, economic development, and to my staff for today. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting.